Welcome to Module 5 presentation, a little bit about revision. First of all, why is revision necessary? And we're talking about revision now because at this point in the class, we're getting deeper and deeper into working sincerely on revision in writing. And so we need to take a moment to talk about why is this step even important. First reason is that revision is crucial because rarely does a writer get everything down on the page perfectly on the first try. That almost never happens. And some students think that good writers are people who can do this, people who can effortlessly produce good work on the first try, but that's actually a myth. Hardly anyone really writes that way. Professional writers, if you read the things they blog and the things they write about their process, professional writers and great students know and often say that the way to produce quality work is to just keep working at it and keep refining the text more and more to improve it. So the mark of a good writer is not that it comes out right the first time. The mark of a good writer is having the tenacity and the determination to keep with that same piece of writing until it gets better. And it's also important to remember that an essay can always be improved. Even if you've already revised the essay 4 times, there's always something that can be made better, which is why revision is always a good idea. There are some great revision techniques that you can do to try to help drive your process so that you're not just aimlessly kind of thinking, what should I fix about this paper? And one of the best is the idea of triage. In the emergency room, when doctors are doing triage, what that means is you have all kinds of different people coming in with different injuries, or sometimes people with multiple injuries. And what they do with triage is they look at a patient and say, okay, what's the biggest problem that needs to be fixed right now? And what can we put off for a few minutes until that big problem's dealt with? So that if a person comes in with a broken toe and a gaping chest wound, they're going to deal with the chest wound first before dealing with the broken toe, right? And the same thing is true for writing. You should do triage on your paper, which means focus on bigger issues first and then move to things that are slightly less important. So the big stuff would be to focus on issues like content and argument first. And that means doing things like work on clarifying your thesis and making sure that all the paragraphs match up with the thesis. That's unity. Work on tightening up the paper's organization. Is it confusing? Are there paragraphs that feel like they come out of nowhere because those ideas aren't mentioned in the thesis? That's a big problem. And also work on making sure that you have enough evidence to support your points. If you're making strong points but then not supporting them with enough evidence, then that argument's going to fall flat. So these are all big picture, big things that you can do first, that you should do first when you're revising, because if you make small corrections first and then do the big stuff, then you might end up changing things so much when working on these bigger issues that you kind of undo some of the work you did in the beginning anyway. That's another good reason it's important to do the big things first, is because sometimes a paper can change so much when working on these content and argument issues that it's safer just to save the smaller things till later anyway. So then after you've dealt with the big issues of argument and things like that, then you can move on to cleaning up some smaller issues like stylistic and grammar issues. This is things like sentence errors, fragments, run-ons, and comma splices. Subject-verb disagreement and pronoun antecedent disagreement. Also pronoun reference problems. All 3 of those first things, sentence errors, disagreement, and pronoun reference problems, they're not just against grammar rules. The bigger issue is that those are things that can make your sentences sound confusing to the reader. Other things to deal with at this stage: proofreading errors like misspellings, missing wrong or extra words, and punctuation mistakes. This is also where you would fix your MLA formatting errors, either with the page formatting or with citations. And this is also where you can look at and address wordy or awkward sentence phrasing. All of these things are things to do once you've dealt with the big issues of argument and content. Just a few tricks of the trade, some things that you can think about doing with revision to make your revision time more effective. A lot of students can hammer out a really good draft, but then when it comes time to revise, just kind of sit and stare at the computer screen and think, I have no idea what to do right now. And so here's some tips. First, don't revise or proofread all at once. Take breaks between paragraphs to clear your mind. What happens when you just keep staring at the same page over and over is sometimes you can start to not see the problems or start to feel overwhelmed. But if you take breaks, if say you revise the introduction paragraph and then you go have dinner and then you come back and work on the first body paragraph and then you go play basketball and then you come back later. When you take those mental breaks in between, it refreshes your mind, clears your mind, and you're actually better able to see the problems when you come back to the task. Obviously, revising this way requires you to think ahead a little bit, right? If you're going to be revising 2 hours before the paper's due, you can't do this. So, give yourself enough time to take breaks, and that helps a lot with revision and proofreading. Another great thing to do is to read the paper out loud to more effectively find errors. Often when we're reading silently to ourselves, we'll kind of gloss over the mistakes or mentally fix mistakes as we're reading in our minds, and so not actually really notice them on a conscious level. But if you're reading a paper out loud and you hear yourself reading out loud the same word twice, or reading out loud a wrong word or something like that, then it actually can be really effective at helping you find mistakes you wouldn't have heard otherwise. Another way to keep your mind fresh is to revise or proofread out of order. So instead of starting from the beginning of the paper, start with the end, do the conclusion paragraph first, then revise the next body paragraph, and kind of work your way backward to the beginning. That can be another effective way to keep your mind fresh. You can ask a friend or classmate to read the paper and tell you if any parts are confusing or unconvincing. Sometimes we're very convinced by our own arguments because we've been very familiar with them through the whole writing process. But another pair of eyes can be helpful at saying, well, I don't think paragraph 3 made sense, or this was not convincing to me. The one thing about that to keep in mind is make sure your friend does not change anything for you in looking at your paper, because that would be plagiarism. That's technically collaboration, and that's not allowed. So if you have a friend or classmate look at your paper, that person should not be changing anything for you. That person should only be making suggestions about things that could help. Finally, you can make an appointment with a writing tutor to discuss your paper. That's another option you can do to help drive you in your revision and help you know what needs to be fixed, is to make an appointment with a writing tutor. If you are an HBU student, you have access to our Student Success Center where we have writing tutors. And I realize not every online student lives in Houston, and if you're from a distance, that's not an option. But if you live in the city, then and can come to campus, you are absolutely free to schedule a free session with a writing tutor, and that is something that's available to you. So these are all different things that you can do to try to maximize the effectiveness of your revision time, and hopefully things that can help you be successful as you're doing the revision process.